Hello and welcome to the Browns Blitz. Today is Tuesday, April 21st, and this is episode number 48. We're very happy to be joined by Emory Hunt today. Emory is known as the Czar of the Playbook. Emory, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I appreciate you guys having me on.
It's always great to have you back to talk some draft. I know it's what you spend a lot of your time on. That's probably a massive understatement, but we appreciate you dropping in and giving us a little bit of your time and making us a little bit more knowledgeable on what's going to happen here in a few days.
Not a problem. It should be an exciting time for Browns fans.
Yeah. My brother Jeff is here also. Jeff, how are things going for you?
Good. Hey guys. Cleveland Super Bowl week doesn't get any better than this, does it?
Yeah. We're always hopeful. So some years it goes better than others. What can we say? Emory, I think you know what I do know. Last season I asked you kind of, what you thought of the strength of the class. And you say you don't really look at classes that way because all classes are, they all have their strengths. What do you think of this class as far as how interesting this class is? As far as how interesting it is to evaluate, and what different ways things could kind of play out.
Every draft class is essentially the same as far as, talent, depth, and all those good things. It's just about what individual teams need are looking to accomplish in each draft. If they're looking for certain positions, then, they'll attack it that way. I think, we tend to get caught up in, this draft is huge at this position at the top. But to be honest, every draft, if you're doing a deep enough job, you'll start to see that every year there's a wealth of talent out there.
But this draft is really, really deep at wide receiver, though, isn't it?
Well, it's people say deep because of, they constantly talk about the same 6 players, so if you keep repeating that over and over, people will start to, say that. But every year I grade about 120 wide receivers. So for me, it's like, it's always a deep class. And I think by nature of how college football is, because you see more 3, 4, and 5 wide receiver sets, you're going to see more receivers, get churned out as far as pro talent development is concerned. And on the flip side of that, you're going to see more defensive backs too. So you're going to see a lot of corners, slot corners, free, strong, and even slot safeties, just by nature of how the game has transitioned.
I get the feeling from talking to you about these guys, and I mean you do commentating and color for some college games throughout the year, so I get the feeling you just really like a lot of these guys. On a personal level, is that a fair statement? I mean, you kind of root for a lot of the smaller school guys too.
Not really, because I think in part of doing the job, you got to just do it honestly. And for instance, I only cover the draft. I start covering the draft in January. I start down at the College Gridiron Showcase, which is in Fort Worth. Then I go from there to the Tropical Bowl, which is in Daytona. And then from there to the Shrine Bowl, which is in St. Pete. And then to the Senior Bowl. Then I come back up here to New York, and I spend that last week of January in the first 2 weeks of February, so those 3 weeks of just watching film on all the prospects. Now, because I go to all these all-star games, I'm compiling a list of players to watch. I will watch those guys first. Then I go back to the games that I broadcasted and pick out the prospects that stood out. And also the games, let's say a week that I didn't have a game to broadcast, or maybe they were playing a game later when my broadcast was done, and or they had a game on a Friday, I'd go to that game and scout that game in person. So I'm just compiling all of those prospect names, and I'll just watch each position until I finish a position, then I grade. So for me, it's always about doing a thorough job because we know the draft is bigger than the 7 rounds, and you're going to have guys that come onto the roster as a undrafted free agent and end up making an impact or making a team. For instance, Browns a couple years ago had a guy signed as an undrafted free agent by the name of Montrell Meander. No one knew who he was. Here I am with a scouting report on Montrell Meander out of Grambling. So,
yeah,
and I always get the other guys.
I think we talked about him last year.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at these other guys that people that cover the draft. If you cover the draft all year around, I feel like you should have way more, reports on prospects than someone like myself that covers the NFL during the season, covers covers college football. Doesn't really get into the draft until January, and I still am able to turn out over 700 prospect reports. Now this year, we do have our first draft guide that we put out for the public. Individual scout notes on every player that we graded, and that's 689 players in this draft guide. So you're looking at over 728 pages of content, and so where else can you find 689 scout reports on players that will get drafted? Some will go and play. Unfortunately, some would have played in the XFL, but that's no longer. But you're going to see guys come on and off the roster that, as a fan, you're looking at it like, wow, who are these back end guys? Who are some of these guys that we just signed? Who is this guy that we just signed in week 3 of the preseason that's looking like he's going to make the roster? Well, you can come to Football Game Plan and get a good, thorough scouting report on it. So it's just me doing the job that I hope everybody that is in the draft business is doing, because you don't want to play favorites, because when you play favorites or you root for people, you want all these guys to make it. But if you root for someone individually, it takes away your ability to be objective and be able to critique that guy's game. And you see that a lot in this industry where people, talk about a player and to the point where they're rooting for the player, and it's fine, but then you can't be critical. And now you go from being an analyst to a fanalist.
Yeah, I get it. I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but you grade small school players alongside of large school players and kind of put everybody in the same position. And honestly, I think that things have really changed in the draft, because guys in small schools are getting drafted higher now than they did probably even just even a few years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but so I think people are coming around to your way of thinking. So I don't know if that has anything to do with you or if it's just the fact that scouting is getting better. But I just wonder if that, if you have any pride that kind of goes along with that you kind of feel like, you've been doing this right, and it's kind of a payoff in that some people are kind of coming around on it and finally seeing it that way.
It's just fun to watch it play out, because people will, for instance, I want to say 2 years ago, I was on not this show, but I was on a show in Cleveland, a radio show, and they asked what would I do with the first 2 picks, the first and 4th overall pick that the Browns had, and I said I would take Saquon Barkley number 1, because I know the best quarterback in the draft will be there for me at 4. And when I said that, the host kind of like went off. It was Saquon Barkley, sure you want to take a running back? I was like, yeah, he's the best player in the draft. I want him. And he's like, well, who would you take at 4? I'm like, Lamar Jackson. And so they went nuts. They went bananas. Fast forward to now, how dangerous would that Browns offense be with those 2 guys on that football team? So sometimes you just gotta bite your tongue when people constantly come at you and go back and forth. And I love the back and forth discourse, because it helps you show your work and show the depth of your knowledge of a certain topic. But a lot of times you just got to sit back and let it all play out, and it's funny because you sit back and let the Lamar Jackson stuff play out, and now everyone is like, oh, wow, man, he was right, so, but either they don't have you back on the show, or they try to forget that you said that and try to play like they were all along on that side of the argument.
Yeah, so the Browns aren't going to be looking quarterback this season, but I know you have a favorite quarterback. So let's talk just a couple minutes about that, because I want to get it recorded on this podcast, and so it can be revisited somewhere down the road, because I'm kind of curious as to how it's going to play out. So let's hear about your favorite quarterback in this draft real quick.
Well, my top three are Joe Burrow, LSU, obviously. Second, I have Jalen Hurts, and third, I have Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, I think those three are the only ones I would feel comfortable taking in the first round.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are coming around on Jalen Hurts, but I think early on people had him, projected to go pretty low, and now it's kind of coming around. So you having him ranked number 2, it might be a shocker to some people, but I'm certainly not going to question the way you rank quarterbacks.
No, there's some I'm not going to say I'm right all the time. Like, there are always some misses. But you just trust in your evaluation, and if you miss, you miss. Just move on. It's like some people are afraid to miss. I grew up knowing that you'll never win a fight if you're afraid to take a hit. So,
right. Well, we know the reality of the draft. I mean, even guys that are really excellent at drafting, they're not hitting on. They're lucky if they're hitting on a majority of their picks.
Well, so, if you have a quote unquote miss, for instance, let's talk about DeShone Kizer. I like Kizer as a prospect. He was my third prospect in the 2017 draft after Watson and Mahomes. So I had Watson, Mahomes, and Kizer as my top 3. And he goes to Cleveland in the second round, and he plays okay in the preseason, well enough to where you say, yeah, this guy got talent. He should start. Then he played up and down during the regular season. Toward the back end, he got better, but there was way too many red zone turnovers. But you like the fact that he still was out there playing hard. Like, I felt like they could have beaten Pittsburgh in that last game. The issue was, okay, this guy struggled as a rookie, but there were some signs. Let's go into 2018 and help build around him, because at that time they didn't have a running game. So, man, if they keep Kizer and then add Saquon Barkley and now take a defensive player, maybe Bradley Chubb with that 4th pick, and then they're going to make that trade for Odell Beckham or fill out the, then maybe we'll see what he can do in year 2. Now, if he went out there and did the same thing in year 2 that he did in year 1, then 2019 you go and get your quarterback, right?
Right.
But I felt like he didn't get the chance to show improvement over his first year, when we've seen quarterbacks like him struggle. Let's say like Goff, but people will say Goff went first. But he still struggled mightily as a rookie, and then had a chance to improve in year 2. You want to see if a guy can get better, but people will look at that as a miss, which it is. So, but at least you can explain why I can explain my thought process. But that's an example of a miss.
So, Emory, I have a follow-up question on that. Talking about misses, it sounds like you're suggesting that a lot of times the miss falls on the organization, as more equally as much on the organization as it does on the prospect. And I wouldn't disagree with that. My question is, if that prospect misses in Cleveland, we tend to use the justification that, he went somewhere else and he wasn't successful there either. So does that, in your mind, solidify the fault of the prospect, or is that a result of how that player entered the league with the original organization?
I think it goes both ways. I think, let's look at Josh Rosen, for instance. Josh Rosen had a chance to start out there in Arizona, and a lot of the issues that you saw there, you felt like, okay, maybe this is a rookie that's going through this thing. You kind of want to see them build more around him and see what he can do in year 2. Then he just had the unfortunate situation of a new coach with a specific scheme, and the number 1 overall pick that which he had the opportunity to take the quarterback that fits that specific scheme. So you knew that they were going to move away from him, although you wanted to see him get another opportunity. So unlike Kaiser, he goes to a new team and actually gets an opportunity to play and start extended games. Now, albeit it was, maybe 4 games or so, and then he played the same way he played as a rookie. So then that just confirms that, the prospect was the issue. His skill set just didn't measure up. Now, granted, there are some that'll say he still wasn't given a fair shake, but you saw that offense, first of all, play up and down with Fitzpatrick. He gets benched for Rosen. Here's your opportunity. Rosen goes in and just doesn't play well at all. They have to bring back Fitzpatrick, and he plays well down the stretch. And here we are, with Fitzpatrick probably going into the season as the starter. So in that case, you look at Rosen and say, you know what? That may be more Rosen than organization. With Kaiser, because we only saw him in Cleveland, the jury is still kind of out on him as far as like who was at fault. But in play, and I don't want to overrate preseason performances because a lot of guys tend to press in the preseason when you don't get a lot of reps. I try to tell this to Colts fans when they talked about P.J. Walker, and then you see P.J. Walker go into the XFL where he is the starter unquestioned and is able to play a full game and prep like a starter all week to go and play a full game. He ends up being the MVP of the league. So that's something that you want to see from Kaiser in, whether it's in 3 games or what have you. You want to see him go into a game as a starter and see what did he learn, or if it's like Rosen and he just continues to make those boneheaded red zone interceptions and turnovers, then that's on Kaiser more so than blaming Cleveland like a lot of people tend to do.
Yeah, so Emory, let's take a look at the mock draft that you put together for the Browns. Now you did mock drafts, I think, for every team. It looked at least like you had a whole heck of a lot of them up on YouTube when I was looking. So I'm assuming you went through and kind of did a mock for everybody, so you had all the players taken in this. So you were kind of going based on who was left on the board when you did these mocks, and you weren't just kind of picking random guys as to who you hoped might be there. And I also know that you said don't take this too seriously. It's a mock draft, so
Right.
and that's a great point. So let's just kind of run through this and just to kind of get your thoughts as to the picks. I think everybody is thinking that the Browns are going to take the left tackle at number 10, and you have the Browns taking Josh Jones. So kind of give us your thoughts on Josh Jones and maybe how you have the tackles ranked and maybe who was on your board at that point that you were taking Josh Jones over.
Well, in the mock, I went, there was a run on tackles. So Andrew Thomas, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills is how I ranked them 1, 2, and 3. Tristan Wirfs would be number 4. And then by the time I got to the Browns, I went to a couple of different positions before Josh Jones was. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go with Josh Jones here because at the end of the day, I don't know when. Just going by how I operated a mock, I was like, maybe there'll be another team that will take a tackle. So let me just, for the Browns, let me secure a tackle now, and that was Josh Jones. So
the other guys were gone.
Yeah, those other guys were gone because again, they're really good prospects, and in those team by team mocks that I do and how I do it, you laid it out perfectly. I just go through each team and take who's left off my I go through my positional rankings, look at the rosters, and look at what they need, and let me fill that need with what I think is the best fit or player.
Okay, so kind of give your thoughts on Josh Jones. I know he played left tackle. Did he play left tackle his entire career in college, or pretty much, I believe, right? That's my understanding. But do you see him as a guy who can step right in and start at the pro level at left tackle?
I think so, and I think if he goes to Cleveland, he's probably going to have to. He's one of those guys that is coming out of a system that, again, when you talk about the style of college football and how certain positions translate. He's got a lot of experience in pass pro, which is good. And so that's something you want a guy to have coming into a program that you're expecting him to play right away. So I just think, one of his biggest assets to me is his athleticism out there in space. And you need that if you're going to have a big tackle out there playing, protecting your quarterback. So he's pretty savvy. So I like his overall skill set, especially blocking out there on the perimeter.
Okay, and then in the second round, you had the Browns taking a linebacker, Akeem Davis-Gaither. I think if a lot of people don't know much about him, I think they would probably like that pick. So to me, I kind of see that pick at 41 as the best available between the best linebacker or the best safety. So I don't know if that's how you saw it, or if you just kind of just took the best player you saw on the board.
Yeah, I took the best player because remember that mock came out. I did this mock. I want to say maybe a week after free agency started because I wanted to give that first week of free agency signings to get done. And at the time, I was like, okay, the Browns need a linebacker. So I went ahead and drafted Akeem Davis-Gaither because to me, he plays outside linebacker exactly how you want your outside linebacker to play. He can cover. He's active at the point of attack. He's just a really good football player, quote unquote, and one of the best defensive players in the draft. He's my second outside linebacker in this draft class, so I think highly of him. So that's why for me it was an easy choice to make. I could see him being one of those guys that even in a real draft probably sneaks into the first round or very high in the second round.
Uh-huh. So then third round you have Ashton Davis, safety out of Cal. Again, I don't know. A lot of people in Cleveland are thinking that the Browns are going to go safety at 41, and they're talking about Antoine Winfield and Grant Delpit all the time, and those are the only names we're really hearing. I think Ashton Davis is a guy you can help people to know a little bit more about, but I think from what I've heard, I think he'd be a pretty solid pick.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a fantastic athlete. He was a hurdler at Cal and got better every year as he played football over there. So he could blitz from many different positions, so you can move him around the defense. He'll be a core special teamer as well. And, he's a guy that has tremendous acceleration and closing speed to the ball carrier. So when you're talking about taking angles, he takes really good angles and aggressive angles and puts him in position to make a play.
So give us an idea on how you rank just who some of your top safeties are and kind of where did you have Ashton Davis ranked?
Well, he's my seventh free safety, and I break down and we grade differently here at Football Game Plan. We have free safeties, strong safeties, and what we call slot safeties. Guys that can play safety but can also cover. Think in terms of a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, right? Mm-hmm. So he was our seventh free safety. Ashton Davis was. So at that point, you're looking at, Grant Delpit was gone. I'm a big fan of Chris Miller out of Baylor, David Dowell out of Michigan State, Josh Thomas out of Appalachian State, Austin Lee of BYU, and Rodney Clemens out of SMU were guys that were ranked ahead of Ashton Davis.
Okay, excellent. And then in the with that second, third rounder, the comp pick, you have the Browns going for a wide receiver, Devin Duvernay. And why don't you tell us about him?
Yeah, he's really good, man. He's explosive. He's a guy that could move all around a formation. He's probably a little bit more he's maybe just probably as explosive or a little bit more explosive than Jarvis Landry. So you're getting a guy that can play in the slot, is good after the catch, can also help out in the return game.
Excellent. And then in the fourth round, you can never have enough cornerbacks. So you have Trajan Bandy. So
Bandy is a tremendous corner. And don't let the size fool you. This is a dude that's legit as far as running up and making hits on receivers or ball carriers, and he's an aggressive slot corner. He can mirror and match with people, and isn't afraid to get in there in the run game and blitzing off the corner and doing it really well. So I like his game. I think he's one of those guys that, whoever drafts him is getting themselves a fantastic player.
Right, and then the Browns have to wait till the 6th round to make another pick, and you have Cam Brown, outside linebacker, at that point.
Yeah, so, Brown is athletic. He's sort of like Isaiah Simmons in that regard, as far as how long and lengthy he is. You get a guy that's that long and lengthy and angular, that can cover. He can play out in space. I think he's probably underrated as a point of attack player. So at that part of the draft, I was like, wow, I can grab Cam Brown and give them 2 athletic outside linebackers and Davis, Gaither, and Brown, and really improve that second level.
And then 7th round, you go back to another Cal safety, Jalen Hawkins.
Yeah, he's a strong safety out there, and I thought his tape was very underrated. I liked how he played, and him and Davis, they work well together. So if you have a chance to recreate that, I thought, why not? And he's one of those guys. He's going to be another core special teamer, and that's something that I really focus on, was how well can guys play special teams, because at the end of the day, in this COVID-19 situation, you're going to need guys that can step in and contribute, because you may not have the body. So if guys are able to play special teams and have some experience there, those, especially late in the draft, that's what you're really looking at. Okay, can we get a guy that we can develop but also can play special teams?
And we're going to take a real short break here just to thank our sponsor, Skippin' Stones. That's a new Etsy shop. Check them out at Etsy.com. Just go in and look up Skippin' Stones. That's all together on Etsy. That's SKIPPINSTONEZ. And Skippin' Stones is packed full of great gift ideas: handmade stone, shell, and sea glass jewelry, pebble art, and frame poetry. So guys, if you're looking for a gift idea for Mother's Day, for your wife, girlfriend, anything, check it out. Ladies, if you're interested in any of the above for yourself, also a great place to check it out. You can also follow Skippin' Stones on Twitter at Skippin' Stones. And we're going to get right back to the action. Yeah, so overall, you've got the Browns taking a tackle, 2 linebackers, 2 safeties, a wide receiver, and a cornerback. And just from my own experience, just from reading mocks and just from playing around with mocks myself, I generally come out pretty close to this. I think the Browns are probably going to go with the tackle, 2 safeties, a linebacker, a wide receiver, and then I think it's debatable just going for the best guy, whether it's a corner, or a defensive lineman. I think to me it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, the distribution that you put into this mock too.
And it was done that mock was done March 29th. So obviously, I know one pick I had in there that I had to change because of the moves that they made when they brought in Case Keenum, I believe. I was like, oh, well, I had them taking Mason Fine somewhere in the draft, like late. But Keenum was there, so I was like, okay, I can move that pick away. And that's what that pick ultimately became, Jalen Hawkins.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So your thoughts on the mock, Jeff?
Well, I just had a question for Emory on that. When you look at positional evaluations, Emory, obviously it sounds like you really sort of base your picks on team need and the players that are available at the time they're picking primarily. But when you look at positional value, for me, obviously I think number one is quarterback. Every team is kind of built around the quarterback, and so there's some added value to picking a quarterback, I think. Beyond that, the edge defensive end position is probably the next most important, and then you could make a case that cornerback in today's pro game is the next most important. I just wonder if you're a GM and you're putting together your draft board, how much additional weight do you put on the value of the position versus, just trying to go out and select for team need. So I guess what that would mean is, do I take a guy who might be rated slightly lower because that's a need that I have this year, versus a guy who might be rated higher that might be more beneficial to me over the next 3 to 5 years?
And, that's a great question, because a lot of people tend to ask that. I think for me, it's and again, I look at the whole thing just completely different, just from my personal philosophy. And I'm of the mindset that if you just take good players, the positional value will take care of itself. And if you're in the draft, you also have to know what you're up against. Case in point, how I would have played the 2018 draft with Lamar and Saquon. Now, yeah, you could chance that your quarterback won't be there at 4, but if people aren't seeing the game the same way as you, and they're going to take the Josh Rosen, the Josh Allen, or whoever else they want to take, a Baker Mayfield, and Lamar Jackson is better than those guys, yeah, I'm going to take the other best player in Saquon, because I know I could take this guy. For instance, if I'm Miami, and this is how I'm viewing it, because you want to have a talented roster, right? And so you have Miami there with 3 first-round picks. I would probably go with a position player at 5, the best player on the board at 5, whoever that player is, the highest graded player we have. So let's say if the draft, how people think it's going to go, and you're sitting there at 5, Miami needs a tackle, and no one has taken Andrew Thomas. I'm taking Andrew Thomas. Or if Isaiah Simmons is there for whatever reason, I'm taking Isaiah Simmons, right? They also need help at tackle. I'm going to take the tackle with the next pick, because I know there's probably going to be a run on tackles. 3rd pick in the first round, I'm taking the running back, because there is a dire need for a running back. So if Swift or Jonathan Taylor is there, I'm taking one of those 2 guys. And people will say, well, where's your quarterback? Well, I have 2 options, because I believe in Jalen Hurts. I could take him right there at the top of round 2. So now I got 3 great players in the first round and my quarterback that I trust in round 2. Or I sign Cam Newton right now and I take all position players, the rest of the draft, because I've signed my quarterback and I don't have to take one. So there's different ways to view it. And I think even if you're Cincinnati, because there is such a drop off between Chase Young and the next, defensive end, you might want to, and if you have a grade on, like I have an 84.5 grade on Burrow and an 82.5 grade on Hurts. So on my board, I have a 90 for Chase Young and a 79 for the next defensive end. So I'm thinking okay, I can take Chase Young number 1 because he's the best player. Let me get Chase Young because he's the best player. And everyone goes about their draft. Somebody's going to take Burrow and scramble, because I got Burrow. I have the top pick in the 2nd round. I can get Jalen Hurts. I got the best defensive end in the draft and my 2nd best quarterback, who I still believe has upside because, he has played better as every year, and also has a different dynamic that Burrow doesn't have. He makes it an 11-on-11 game, so that's going to help out Joe Mixon. It's going to help those receivers run against better coverages. And in the 3rd round, I sign, I call up Tampa Bay with my 3rd round pick and trade that for OJ Howard. So it's like you got to have like a plan. And I think it's all up to the individual. And again, I was in 2017, I was screaming for Browns fans to take Deshaun Watson number 1 or take Pat Mahomes number 1. And everyone then said, you got to take the DN, you need a pass rusher. Now, when there's a DN or the pass rusher, everyone's saying, oh, you got to take the quarterback. So it's like, just take who you feel as though is the best player, and your position value will take care of itself.
Right. Yeah. The other side of that, I guess, is, teams tend to fall in love with particular players and then try to slot them in to certain value positions in the draft. So if, we're in love with a particular tackle and we're picking 10th, but we think he should really be graded at 18 to 20, we're going to try to move down to that slot so that we're not choosing a guy that we love too early. And I hear this a lot that, we should go out and get Ezra Cleveland, but we don't want to take him before, 19 or 20, something like that. So we need to work a trade with somebody to move down. And this kind of stuff just scares the crap out of me because it never seems to work out really well in Cleveland. So, I'm a big fan of what you're saying, Emory, that you look at your spot in the draft, you have, your board such that if there's a huge drop off, like your point about Chase Young to the next guy, and then maybe in another position, there's not nearly as much of a drop off. You take the guy that is clearly better than the guy behind him. It's been my contention for a while that, that's how you build a solid roster. I think, we tend to panic and try to go get a specific guy each year, at a certain value. And that's where we kind of, go off the rails.
If your team is good, no one cares where you took the player.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's true.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
No one remembers that, you traded down 3 spots and took him at 21 when you didn't take him at 18. No one cares. As long as the player you take, he better be good,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the Browns are at 10. The only way I'm trading down is if there are, I would trade down a couple spots if there are 3 or 4 guys left that I like, or if there are no guys left that I like. Other than that, there's no reason to trade down to hope that you're going to get a guy at a lower, at a lower spot. I mean, you have to be smart. If your guy's there, you just take him. It doesn't make sense otherwise. And saying that,
right.
Emory, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say your guy or one of your guys. Hopefully there are multiple guys there at 10. If there is a run on tackles, maybe somebody else of great value drops.
Prime example, guys. Looking at my big board right now, and I have 6 guys with a 90 grade. Chase Young, Andrew Thomas, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills, Jeff Okudah, and I have DeAndre Swift with a 90 grade. So if I'm Cincinnati, obviously I'm not taking Swift because I have a back, right? So scratch him off. Okudah, I look at, okay, do we need a corner? Maybe we do need a corner. And I look at the other corners that I have after him. I'm like, okay, I got C.J. Henderson. I got A.J. Terrell. And I'm picking at the top of second round. I like Noah Igbenogany. I like him to where I'm not pressed to take Okudah. Plus, we don't have a major need at corner. Like we got guys that can start right now that we feel comfortable about at corner. So I'm taking them off the list. We're getting Jonah Williams back at tackle, so that could be interesting because I have 3 tackles with a 90 grade, so I can take a guy that that can easily be a starter for me on on the right side of the line of scrimmage. If I'm looking at a tackle, he could instantly start right now. Anybody I pick can start over Bobby Hart right now. Any one of these 3 guys, at right tackle while we get Jonah Williams back healthy. So tackle could be, but it's a deep class, quote unquote. So maybe at the top of round 2, there's still a chance for me to get Sadiq Charles that I could develop into what I want him to be at the right tackle because he got a lot of talent. He's a good athlete. So take tackle off the board. But when I look at Chase Young at 90 and I look at Jabari Zuniga at 79, I'm like, I know Sam Hubbard is a good player, hustle player. Dunlap is getting up there. We really got to get pressure on Lamar Jackson. We really got to get pressure on Ben Roethlisberger and Baker Mayfield. Man, we can come away with the best player in the draft. I'm going to go with Chase Young. So that's how I would come about that, using my big board as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Emory, which of those guys that, and again, I'm gonna exclude Chase Young here, but which of those guys could fall to 10 to make the Browns kind of forget about taking a left tackle at that spot?
You mean which one of the tackles?
Well, not a tackle. Who could still be there at 10 that would make the Browns make a pick other than a tackle?
I mean, how bad does the Browns want a receiver? Because a receiver would be there. You can get a game breaker receiver. Do you want to add another weapon for Baker Mayfield? That's possible. But I struggle to see, a position to where at 10, you could have a corner there, but you just drafted Greedy Williams last year in the second round. And you can get you a good slot corner later, I know that's a 12th starter. Or if you want to take a chance to swing for the fences, how much you like Antoine Winfield, the safety. But you just signed Carl Joseph, and although Winfield can play free or strong, he would be a great player. But does that supersede the need to protect Baker Mayfield, who had issues last year in the pocket? So you kind of are forced, I think, to think about that part of it and get the tackle, because now you already signed Jack Conklin, who's going to start day one on the right side. If you have a guard high on your board, you take the guard too to help on the interior. But you're probably still going to be relegated to go to tackle. Now, some people may say, hey, Derek Brown could be there, the defensive tackle for Auburn.
That's a possibility.
How high do you have him rated? Or if for whatever reason, Isaiah Simmons is still there, you take Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah, I think those would be the two guys that would make the Browns at least pause for a minute, right? Derek Brown and Isaiah Simmons, potentially. But it'd still be hard to pass if one of those top tackles are there, I think. Just really feels like it. So who would I love your mock, and I really like Davis Gaither. Who else could potentially, who would be the safety that the Browns might be able to get in that second round? If Davis Gaither isn't there, who would be a top safety that you would like to see that could fit in with the Browns, could really help them out?
I like the guy that I mentioned in Antoine Winfield. I think he would be he's just a really good football player. Or even, one of the Rodney Nelson from SMU is a solid safety. I think he doesn't get enough credit. I like Terrell Burgess. He's a combo safety. Kayvon Wallace, I like. Those are some guys that I am, really high on.
And Emory, where are you going to be for the draft?
I'll be here at the house, social distancing, but I will be on a live broadcast for Cheesehead TV. That's a Packers outlet with Aaron Nagler. I'm sorry, does a great job with that, and I'll be doing that draft, going pick by pick. Normally I'm at the studio in New York City, doing the live first round with Fantasy Sports Network. They usually have the live telecast, and we're breaking down the picks. But because of the situation, I'll be at home this year doing the virtual thing with Aaron Nagler and Cheesehead TV.
Staying safe as it should be.
And comfortable.
That's good. Yeah. Are you going to be covering all 3 days, or?
No, just that day I'll be with that one. Friday I'll be doing some stuff with CBS Sports, and then Saturday I'm up in the air. I think I still may be doing some things with CBS Sports as well. So we'll see.
Great, Jeff. Do you have any other questions for Emory before we kind of close up shop for the evening?
No, I think he's done a great job of covering things. I mean, my only question really is with Emory suggesting Josh Jones, and I know you like him as a guy who can come in with sort of a minimal learning curve. If we're talking about, we're going to maybe end up with somebody in that second tier of tackles, what do you think of the other guys that are kind of in that same group? And is there anybody there that we might be overlooking who you think could potentially have a real surprising upside career-wise?
Well, I look at I mentioned him earlier in Sadiq Charles. I think he has a ton of upside. He's a young player, so he has a growth. I'm a big fan of Austin Jackson out of USC. I like him too. Matt Parrott out of UConn, I thought was excellent on film. Well, he was the only excellent player on UConn film when you watch him. Drew Richmond out of USC, the other tackle, book into Austin Jackson. Lucas Nyang, I think people forget how good of a prospect he was before the injury. So those, it's not all, it's not all bad if they don't take a tackle at 10. And, when they do get the opportunity in the second round, and they can still, there's going to be some tackles there that they can definitely, take and groom. So, this is a really good class, in my opinion, guys that can be solid starters. I just think that, if Baker Mayfield doesn't handle the pocket better, that's a him problem. And you can't keep wasting picks on linemen when the quarterback is the issue. You're going to see that out here in New York with the Giants we got to build the offensive line. Well, your quarterback holds the ball too long anyway, so the old line won't matter. So I think, I hate when people put the blame on the old line and not want to give the quarterback, the credit that he deserves as being part of the problem. So I don't think that if you don't take a tackle at 10, it will hurt you dramatically, because some good tackles in here that you can bring in, groom, develop, and have as you started at some point during the season.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that, you won't get an argument from me on the quarterback responsibility part of it, but that's probably not a real popular opinion here in Cleveland.
Yeah, you did. It depends on the quarterback. They had no problem throwing Kaiser under the bus, but Baker Mayfield they want to protect. And it's fine. I get it. But you have to be honest, and then that's why you got to take emotion out of it and really be
right.
Look at it honestly and say, you know what, Baker really didn't play well this year. And that is a part of the reason why, because the Browns are not a bad football team. I mean, even as bad as he played, the Browns were what, 7-9 or something like that.
Yeah, 7-8-1.
7-8-1. So I mean,
yeah,
they're right there, to make the playoffs, and turn that thing around. So Baker showed that he could play well. Just has to do it more consistently.
They were 6-9-1, right, Jeff?
I was just trying to come up with the number.
Geez, it's been
sure.
Too long, Emory.
Yeah.
Geez, we moved on from last seson. Anyways,
I think
they finished 6-9-1. Yeah, that's my mistake. I think I had 7. Yeah. Anyways,
it was 6-10.
Yeah, it was
6-10. Oh, they were 7-8-1.
It was 7-8-1 the prior year.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting my season mixed up. Yeah. Yeah, we quit counting.
They all sort of run together after a while.
Yeah, we quit counting game. We quit keeping score last year after a while. So yeah. Anyways, so
well,
all right.
I'm a big fan of just addressing that left tackle issue, Emory, so that excuse goes away, and I think we do get a fair read on our quarterback this year, and hopefully everything works out, the way it should. But I agree that you can't keep blaming everybody else. Eventually, you got to take responsibility.
Yeah, and I mean, fortunately for Cleveland, it's hard to really be a terrible team. That team is stacked with talent offensively, and hopefully it all comes together.
Yep.
All right, Emory Hunt. You guys can follow him at F Ball Game Plan. Emory, you want to give any other information out as to where everybody can find your stuff?
They can purchase my draft guide at footballgameplan.com/2020 draft guide. Again, 689 individual scouting reports on the players that I graded this year. You're talking about strengths and areas of improvements, all the different attributes that I came up with to come up with their grade. You'll see that there as well. And you will see the games that I watched. So therefore, you can go watch those same games and come up with your own take on what you think about the prospect. And that's 689 scouting reports, 782 pages, all in PDF form, colorful PDF form, footballgameplan.com/2020 draft guide.
All right, you guys check that out. And this has been the Browns Blitz, and we will catch you next time.